A lion can kill a human in under 4 seconds. A tiger can snap a neck with a single bite. A crocodile can drag a grown adult underwater. A venomous snake can end a life without ever touching it twice. So why do videos exist of people petting them? Not through glass, not from a vehicle. Right there, within reach of the teeth. If you ask most people why these don't simply kill them the first chance they get, they'd say something about training, or luck, or some kind of magic trust between man and beast. But none of those answers are actually true, because the strange thing is that lions, tigers, crocodiles, bears, and snakes all tolerate humans for completely different reasons. 5 deadly predators, 5 completely different reasons it sometimes works. In 1969, a couple named George Adamson and Joy Adamson raised a lioness named Elsa from a cub and eventually released her back into the wild. Years later, fully wild, fully capable of killing either of them without effort, Elsa walked back into their camp, approached George directly, and rubbed her head against his leg exactly the way she had as a cub. She had been gone for months, living as a wild predator, hunting and surviving entirely on her own. And yet something in her recognized him, specifically him, as something other than prey, other than threat, other than stranger. That single moment forced researchers to ask a question that still doesn't have a clean answer. Here's where you need to throw out the word trust, because trust implies something closer to friendship, and that's not quite what's happening here. What's actually happening is closer to a concept researchers call imprinting combined with something called habituation, and the two work very differently depending on the animal. Imprinting happens early, often in the first days or weeks of an animal's life, when its brain is essentially asking one question: what counts as my own kind? Konrad Lorenz demonstrated this with geese in the 1930s. Goslings would follow the first moving creature they saw after hatching as their parent, regardless of species. Big cats raised by humans from infancy undergo the same process. Their developing brain files humans under safe, not under prey or threat. That filing decision, made in the first few weeks of life, can last decades. It's exactly what allowed Elsa to recognize George as something other than a stranger, even after months of fully wild, independent living. Habituation is different. It doesn't require infancy. It just requires repetition without consequence. Tigers are almost never imprinted on humans the way lions sometimes are. They're solitary by nature and far more dangerous to raise this way. Instead, tiger handlers build relationships through habituation alone. Thousands of repeated, carefully controlled interactions, every single one ending without incident, until the animal's nervous system gradually downgrades a specific individual from potential threat to known, predictable presence. Crocodiles complicate this picture even further, because reptile brains don't process relationships the way mammal brains do. There's no equivalent of imprinting in a crocodile the way there is in a lion cub. And yet there are documented cases, including a well-known one involving a Costa Rican fisherman who, after nursing an injured crocodile back to health, was approached by that same crocodile for over a decade afterward, allowing the man to swim with it, embrace it, and even open its jaws by hand. Researchers studying this relationship were genuinely puzzled. The leading explanation isn't emotional at all. It's that the crocodile's brain, through thousands of repeated encounters with this one specific person, learned an extremely narrow association: this particular shape, this particular scent, this particular pattern of movement. Strip away even one of those variables, and that entire narrow association collapses immediately. Crocodile attacks on familiar handlers, including tragic ones. Bears present a different mechanism entirely, one that has more to do with size and posture than with bonding at all. Wildlife biologists who work in close proximity to grizzly and black bears, particularly researchers like Timothy Treadwell, whose years living among wild grizzlies became widely documented, describe something closer to the shark explanation than the lion one. Most bear attacks on humans occur from surprise encounters, sudden proximity, or situations involving cubs or food. The tragic cases, including Treadwell's own eventual death, occurred specifically in moments when that calculation changed. A starving bear late in the season, unfamiliar with this particular human, in a year when normal food sources had collapsed. And then there are snakes, which break almost every assumption people bring into this topic. because snakes do not recognize individual humans at all. Snake handlers who work daily with venomous species are not relying on the snake knowing them, liking them, or trusting them in any sense whatsoever. What they're relying on is body tension, head positioning, tongue flicking patterns, and most importantly, temperature and recent feeding status, since a snake that has just eaten is dramatically less likely to strike defensively. There is no bond being built across years here. So why don't they bite? Sometimes it's because an animal's brain decided in its earliest days of life that this particular human falls outside the category of threat or prey entirely, the way Elsa's mind did. Sometimes it's thousands of repeated, harmless encounters, the way it does with tigers and crocodiles. Sometimes it's an animal whose threat calculation simply never gets triggered by a calm, predictable presence, the way it works with bears. The strange thing is that the people who work closest to dangerous animals are often the ones who trust them the least, not because they fear them more, but because they understand them better. The viral videos make it look like friendship. The professionals know it's really prediction. They spend years learning what comes right before an attack, and prediction is not the same thing as safety. A lion can still be a lion, a crocodile can still be a crocodile, a snake can still be a snake.